I remembered the exact sound his hand made when it struck my face. It was sharp, almost hollow, like hitting the side of an empty wooden drawer. It was strange. The things my mind chose to focus on while everything inside me trembled. Not the pain, not the shock, not even the trembling in my knees. Just that empty sound, echoing through the kitchen I had spent decades trying to make into a sanctuary. The moment it happened, I felt as if the universe had narrowed into a single cold point. A point that lived between Dominic's eyes and mine. There was no accident in that slap. There was no drunken clumsiness. There was no remorse. His face looked carved out of stone, his expression as blank as a winter sky right before a storm breaks. For a heartbeat, the world was silent. Even the refrigerator seemed to hold its breath. I saw my reflection in his pupils, a small, aging woman with shaking hands, the very woman who had spent her life staying quiet, smoothing conflicts, making excuses, whispering prayers in the dark, hoping he would someday grow out of this temper that had followed him like a shadow since boyhood. But he didn't grow out of it. He grew into it. And now, standing between the cabinet door and the floor tiles, my back throbbing from the impact, I finally understood something that should have terrified me more than the slap itself. I was not looking at my son anymore. I was looking at a man who could kill me with the same emotional detachment one uses to squash a spider. I would tell people later, when I finally found my voice. But in that moment, the only voice I heard was my own breath, ragged, shaking, trying to understand how a life can twist so far from what a mother imagines. Dominic stood over me, chest heaving, jaw clenched. A drop of sweat ran down the side of his temple. His breath smelled of cheap beer and self-pity. He muttered something I could barely hear. Something about me, pushing his buttons. Something about me, never knowing when to shut up. The words themselves didn't matter. They blended into the buzzing in my ears, the heaviness spreading through my limbs. I watched him turn his back and stagger away, stumbling into the hallway, knocking over the coat rack, cursing at it as though it had personally offended him. The moment he was gone, I felt my body deflate, like a balloon someone had finally released. My shoulders sank, my head fell forward. My hands pressed against the floor, trying to find some point of stability in a world that had just shifted off its axis. There was dust on the tile, a small dead leaf Dominic had dragged in on his shoe, a faint trace of flour from the biscuits I had made earlier, the ones cooling on the counter, untouched, forgotten. It was absurd that my mind clung to these details. But trauma has a strange way of magnifying the ordinary. Maybe because the ordinary is the one thing you still recognize when everything else has become alien. My cheek burned. It pulsed with a slow, deep ache. I raised my fingers to touch the skin and felt how hot it was, how swollen it was becoming. And in that simple touch, a realization bloomed inside me, cold and full, like a winter moon rising behind clouds. This is the moment I die if I do nothing. I had survived Dominic's moods for years. Survived his tantrums as a teenager, his sudden rages as a young man, the destructive spirals he fell into whenever alcohol mixed with frustration. Survived the yelling, the broken plates, the slammed doors, the threats muttered under his breath when he thought I could not hear. I had survived all of it by believing, with a mother's desperate hope, that he still had goodness somewhere inside him. But tonight, the darkness had eaten every last piece of light. What I saw in his eyes was not my son. It was a stranger wearing my son's face. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe so I can share more stories with you. I sat on the floor for a long moment, gathering strength like someone trying to collect shards of a shattered mirror. When I finally stood up, the house felt different. As if the walls had shifted or the furniture had pulled back from me. Even the lights seemed harsher, revealing truths I had spent years keeping in the shadows. I walked into the bathroom to look at myself. The mirror hurt almost as much as the slap. The woman staring back at me did not look weak. That surprised me. She looked haunted, yes. Hurt, yes, but not weak. Beneath the swelling and the redness, there was something new simmering in her eyes. A heat, a sharpness, a line drawn in the sand. I took a slow breath, then another. The tremble in my hands began to fade. My voice, silent for so long, whispered inside me like a warm wind rising across a desert. Enough. I did not call the police. I did not scream for help. I did not pack a bag and run. Those might have been reasonable things to do, but mothers do not always choose reason. We choose something deeper, stranger, more instinctive. I chose a moment of stillness. I chose to listen to the part of me that had been silent for too many years. I walked to the kitchen. I looked at the biscuits. I looked at the fine china stacked neatly in the cupboard. I looked at the empty dining table, waiting like a stage just before the curtain rises. And without fully realizing why, I decided to prepare breakfast for the next morning. Not a normal breakfast, not a peaceful one, a deliberate one, a symbolic one. A farewell to the life I had lived in fear. And perhaps, though I did not yet dare to name it, a declaration of war. I wiped the flour from the counter. I straightened the chairs. I pulled out the good tablecloth, the one I saved for Christmas mornings and special occasions. My movements felt automatic, almost ceremonial, as though I were stepping into a role I had been rehearsing for decades without knowing it. Outside, the night deepened. The street lamp cast long shadows through the window, slicing the kitchen into patches of light and dark. I watched the steam rise from the kettle as it heated. I listened to the gentle crackling of biscuit crusts as they cooled. Every sound seemed amplified, like I was hearing the world with new ears. I told myself I was doing this to calm my nerves, to give my hands something to do. But as I set the table with almost ritual precision, aligning the forks, smoothing the fabric, resetting each plate until it looked flawless, the truth settled over me like a cloak. I was preparing for a reckoning. When the table was perfect, I stepped back and stared at it. The fine china gleamed. The silverware caught the overhead light. The biscuits sat golden on the plate, soft and fragrant. It would have looked like a picture from a magazine, if not for the swelling on my cheek and the thrumming pulse of resolve beating inside my chest. And then I did something I had never done before. I called my sister. Ella answered on the second ring, her voice alert the moment she heard my silence. She had always been able to read me like an open book. "Simone, what happened?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight. The words felt heavy, like they were made of stone. But then slowly they came. He hit me. Tonight. The silence that followed was nothing like my earlier stillness. This silence was sharp, electric, like the crackle just before lightning tears through a storm cloud. "I am coming," she said. Not asked, not offered, declared. "Ella?" I began, but she cut me off. "Do not argue with me. I am coming." I knew that tone. I had grown up with that tone. It was the tone that had made lawyers tremble in her courtroom, the tone that had made defendants confess before she even opened the case file, the tone that made entire rooms fall silent. Ella Adams was a retired judge, but retirement had not softened her. Her voice still carried the weight of justice, stern, unshakable, relentless. I should have felt afraid. I should have felt ashamed. A part of me did, but beneath the shame was something else, relief. A small spark at first, then brighter, growing with each passing breath. She knew. She had always known. I had just never let her name it. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the empty chair across from me. The chair Dominic would sit in. The chair he would assume he deserved, the way he assumed everything in the house would always revolve around him. I felt the old familiar guilt rise in my chest, the guilt that had kept me silent for so long, the guilt that whispered, "He is your son. You must protect him." But another voice rose to meet it. A new voice, a steady voice, a voice I had not heard in years. "And who protects you?" The house was quiet. Dominic was upstairs, either passed out or brooding. The air felt thick, heavy, as though the walls were absorbing the tension like sponges. I could feel the bruise beneath my skin swelling further, throbbing in rhythm with my heartbeat. The night seemed endless, stretched thin by fear and anticipation. I walked around the house, checking locks, turning off lights, listening for any sign that he might come back downstairs in another drunken rage. But he did not. Eventually, I returned to my bedroom and lay on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling. The shadows above me twisted and shifted as the hours passed. I did not sleep, not even for a second. I waited for morning, for Ella, for the moment I would stop being a victim and start being something else. As dawn crept through the edges of the curtains, pale and hesitant, I felt a strange calm settle over me. My cheeks still hurt, my body still ached, but my mind was no longer trembling. The fear had burned itself out, leaving behind a cold clarity. I rose, put on a clean blouse, brushed my hair, and glanced once more at the swelling on my face. I looked older than usual, tired. But there was a quiet ferocity in my eyes I had not seen in decades. When the knock came, a firm, measured knock, I knew it was her. I opened the door to find Ella standing tall, her gray hair tied neatly, her expression carved in stone. Beside her stood Officer Dave Miller, a longtime family friend, his eyes soft with concern, but his posture straight and attentive. "Simone," Ella said, stepping inside. She did not touch my cheek, though I saw her eyes flick toward the bruise. She did not pity me. She respected me, and that meant more than any embrace. I led them to the kitchen, and when Ella saw the table, the fine china, the immaculate arrangement, the golden biscuits, she understood instantly what this breakfast really was. A line drawn, a chapter ending, a mother reclaiming her life. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence where futures begin. Then footsteps echoed from the hallway above. Slow, heavy, familiar. Dominic was waking up, and the stage was set. The first sound I heard from the hallway was the dragging shuffle of Dominic's feet. It was the same sound I had heard every morning for years, a groggy, irritated trudging, as though he resented the very act of waking up. But on this morning, those steps felt heavier, more ominous, each one echoing through the walls like a countdown. I sat at the table, my hands folded neatly in my lap, my back straight, my heartbeat slow and unnervingly steady. Ella sat beside me, her posture dignified, her eyes calm but sharp, like a hawk perched on a branch. Officer Miller took the seat at the far end of the table, his uniform pressed, his expression quiet but alert. The moment Dominic's silhouette appeared at the bottom of the stairs, the air shifted. He paused on the last step, blinking at us, confusion fogging his bleary eyes. His hair was a mess, sticking out in wild directions. He wore the same shirt from the night before, wrinkled and stained with spilled beer. A bruise purpled the side of his jaw. He must have hit himself against something during his drunken tantrum, though he probably didn't remember it. "What's all this?" he muttered, rubbing his eyes. His voice was thick, scratchy. "A family reunion?" I watched his gaze move from the table, immaculately set, deliberately arranged, to my face, where the bruise sat like an accusation. For a split second, his eyes widened. A flicker of awareness, a flash of memory. But just as quickly, he smothered it, burying it beneath a familiar mask of casual indifference. He smirked. "Well, Ma, you really went all out for breakfast. Who died?" The words were meant to cut, to control, to remind me of the unspoken rule he had built over the years. Every moment belonged to his mood, his convenience, his emotional weather. But not today. I looked at him steadily. "Sit down, Dominic." The tone in my voice startled him. It startled me too. It was soft but unyielding, quiet but absolute. He frowned, trying to assess the shift he sensed beneath the surface. He looked at Ella next. "Aunt Ella? What are you doing here?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence was more powerful than any lecture she could have given. Then his eyes landed on Officer Miller. That was when the first crack appeared in his bravado. "Dave," he said, forcing a laugh, "why are you here? This isn't about the noise complaint last week, is it? That neighbor is always exaggerating." "It isn't about the neighbor," Officer Miller said gently. The color drained slightly from Dominic's face. I saw the moment when his nerves began to fray. Like a man reaching blindly for a handrail that wasn't there, he tried to find footing in the only place he had ever felt safe, manipulation. "Look, whatever this is," he said, turning back to me with a forced grin, "can it wait? I'm starving." He reached for a biscuit. Before his hand could touch the plate, Ella spoke. "Sit," she said, just one word, but she said it with the full weight of her decades on the bench. Dominic froze, his hand hovering above the food, his eyes widening at the commanding tone. Slowly, reluctantly, he pulled out the chair and sat. The room fell into a thick silence, the kind that made people shift in their seats, swallow hard, look for exits. But I remained steady. Dominic glanced at me once more, irritation creeping back into his expression as the discomfort grew. "Okay, really, what's going on? You look like you're about to hold a hearing. What did I do? What did I do?" The question rang through me like a gong. I pressed my fingertips together, feeling the tremor in my hands trying to return. But the tremor was not fear. Not anymore. It was the last remnant of the old version of myself, the version that was taking her final breaths this morning. "You hurt me," I said. He blinked. I let the words hang, heavy and unmistakable. You shoved me, you slammed me against the cabinet, and you slapped me. His jaw tightened. He looked away, then back at me, then away again, as if the truth on the table burned too brightly for him to face. Ma, he said, a strained laugh escaping him. Come on, I didn't hit you. You know how dramatic you get. You probably bumped into something. A familiar phrase, a practiced phrase. One he had used many times to shrink my experiences into something small enough to swallow. But this time, it was Ella who responded. The swelling says otherwise, she said. Her voice cut through the room like a blade made of ice and clarity. Dominic shot her a glare. Oh, so now you're getting involved? I thought you retired. Her eyebrows lifted, calm and unimpressed. Retirement does not prevent me from recognizing assault when I see it. He scoffed, pushing his chair back slightly defensively. Assault? Seriously? This is insane. You struck your mother, Officer Miller said calmly. She has the right to report it. Dominic slammed his palm on the table. The biscuits rattled, the silverware trembled, but none of us flinched, and that shook him more than any threat could have. I didn't do anything, he snapped. She's exaggerating. You all know she's sensitive. Enough, I said. The word surprised me as much as it silenced him. He turned to me, eyes narrowing, studying me with suspicion. I felt the old rattling fear try to rise, the instinct to apologize, to smooth it over, to comfort him even in the wake of my injury. But I held the line. I am not sensitive, I said. I was hurt by you. His face twisted. His pride flailed like a wounded animal. But his anger, the monster I had tiptoed around for decades, no longer towered over me like a storm. Because I finally saw what it really was, a frightened, undisciplined boy hiding in a grown man's body. A boy who had never been told no, never been held accountable, never been denied the emotional control he wielded like a weapon. He leaned back, crossing his arms. If I hit you, where's the proof? I didn't speak. I simply turned my head slightly, letting the morning light illuminate the bruise along my cheek, the purpling skin, the faint swelling, the undeniable imprint of a violent hand. His eyes flicked to the mark, then away, then back. For a moment, a tiny moment, his mask slipped, and I saw something like panic seep through. Not remorse, not guilt, but fear of consequences. He stammered, That could be anything. You bruise easily. What caused it? Ella asked quietly. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. For the first time in his life, Dominic couldn't talk himself out of the truth. I felt my heart thudding, each beat a reminder that I was alive, and that I intended to stay that way. I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze head on. I called your aunt after it happened, I said. I told her everything. His jaw fell slack for a second. You did what? I told her the truth. The fury that flooded his expression was instant and explosive. Not sorrow, not reflection, rage. How dare I break the silence he believed belonged to him? How dare I tell someone? How dare I choose myself? You're unbelievable, he spat. You're seriously unbelievable. I can't believe you'd betray me like that. Betray him. The word nearly made me laugh, a short, bitter, humorless laugh I suppressed behind tight lips. What about your betrayal? I asked. What about all the years I tried to help you, to understand you, to protect you from yourself? What about last night? He shook his head violently. I drank too much. People make mistakes. This was not a mistake, I said. This was a choice. He glared at me as though I had committed the unforgivable sin of refusing to remain small. So what? He snapped, gesturing toward Officer Miller. You're going to have me arrested? Your own son? For what? A misunderstanding? Officer Miller's voice remained steady, compassionate but firm. Dominic, this is serious. And whether your mother decides to file charges or not, the incident must be documented. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. His chest puffed out, an animal cornered. No, I'm not doing this. I'm not playing this stupid game. It is not a game, Ella said. It is accountability. He pointed at her, his finger trembling with adrenaline. You always hated me. I never hated you, she replied. I hated what you did. He looked at me next, his eyes wild. Ma, you're really gonna let them do this to me? I breathed in slowly, deeply, grounding myself. I did not let anyone do anything to you, I said. You did this. He stared at me, incredulous. The realization began to dawn on him that his old tactics were not working, that I was not shrinking. That my voice, soft, steady, controlled, was no longer bending to his nostrils flared. You know what? Fine. If you want to play judge and jury, go ahead. Ruin your family, ruin your son's life, and when everything falls apart, don't you dare come crying to me. He moved toward the door. Dominic, Officer Miller said, standing up slowly, don't walk away. But he didn't listen. He spun back toward me, his face contorted in a sneer. You're pathetic, you're old, you're lonely, and you're blaming me for your sad life. A single sentence. This time I did laugh, a soft, breathy sound that surprised even me, because the truth was suddenly so clear. I was not the pathetic one. I was the free one. He was the prisoner, trapped inside his own fury, his own delusions, his own refusal to grow. I stood up slowly, pushing back my chair with deliberate calmness. Officer Miller, I said, I would like to file the report. Dominic froze mid-step. What? He barked. I repeated, to file the report. His entire face drained of color. Real fear flashed in his eyes, not deep enough to reach remorse, but enough to pierce his armor. You can't do that, he whispered. I straightened my shoulders. Yes, I said, I can. Ella placed her hand gently on mine, a gesture of solidarity, not pity. Officer Miller retrieved the necessary forms from his bag and placed them on the table. The pen beside them seemed to glow under the morning light, a simple object carrying the weight of a lifetime. Dominic stared, frozen, shaking, his chest rising and falling in fast, uneven breaths. You're choosing them over me, he whispered. No, I said softly. I am choosing myself. He staggered back, as if the words had struck him. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out, perhaps for the first time in his life. Officer Miller began the process, asking me questions gently, giving me time when my voice wavered. But it did not waver much. Each answer I gave felt like a stone placed into a foundation I had never been allowed to build. Dominic watched, stunned, powerless. When the report was complete, Officer Miller closed the folder and looked at him. Dominic Adams, he said, we need you to come with us. Dominic's eyes snapped wide open. Are you arresting me? Detaining, Officer Miller said, pending further evaluation. No, he gasped. No, this is insane. Ma, tell him to stop. I looked at him, seeing him not as the boy I raised, not as the man he pretended to be, but as the person he had chosen to become. I won't stop this, I said. His face collapsed, a mix of rage and disbelief and something like heartbreak. But not for hurting me, for losing control. Officer Miller approached calmly. Dominic backed up, hitting the wall. Don't touch me, he said, voice cracking. Don't touch me. But he didn't resist further. Deep down, some part of him knew this moment had been coming for a long time, long before the slap, long before the shouting, long before last night. Officer Miller guided him out the door, speaking to him calmly, professionally. Ella remained at my side, steady as a pillar. The morning sun spilled across the kitchen table, illuminating the untouched breakfast. When the door finally closed behind them, the house became impossibly still. The silence no longer felt like fear. It felt like freedom. I sat down, letting my shoulders drop, letting the weight of decades slip off me piece by piece. Ella poured us both tea, her hands steady, her expression softening at last. You did the right thing, she said quietly. For a long moment, I didn't speak. Then I whispered, with a trembling breath of relief, I know. When the front door closed behind Dominic and the lingering echo faded from the hallway, I expected the house to feel lighter. I expected the air to shift, for the oppressive heaviness that had lived within these walls to lift like fog burned away by the morning sun. But what met me instead was a kind of eerie stillness, as if the house itself didn't quite know how to breathe without him stomping through it. A silence with edges, sharp and unfamiliar. I stood in the center of the kitchen, my hands resting lightly on the back of a chair, waiting for some internal wave of relief to wash over me. But relief is not a single moment. It is not a sudden blaze of light. It is a slow unfurling, fragile and hesitant, like a flower testing the air after a long frost. Ella stayed with me for a while after Officer Miller took Dominic away. She moved through the house with quiet purpose, straightening a coaster here, closing a cabinet there, her presence steady like a lighthouse beam. I appreciated the way she did not hover. She knew better than anyone that too much attention can feel like pressure when someone is trying to step out of fear for the first time. I eventually sank into one of the kitchen chairs and let myself take a single deep breath. A breath that felt like it came from someplace deep within me I had not accessed in years. Ella sat across from me, hands folded in her lap, waiting. "How are you feeling?" she asked. The question sounded simple, but it was not. Feelings were tangled inside me like threads knotted after decades of twisting in different directions. "I do not know yet," I said honestly. "That is all right," she replied. My eyes drifted toward the table I had set so carefully for that momentous morning. The plates, the fine china, the biscuits, the meticulous placement of everything, it all looked like evidence from a crime scene, except the crime was not bloodshed or broken glass. It was something quieter, a shift in power, a reclamation of self. Suddenly the tears came, quietly at first, just a few drops rolling down my bruised cheek. They surprised me more than the slap had. I was not a woman who cried easily, not even when I was young. Years of holding my family together had taught me to swallow tears before anyone could see them, but now they flowed without permission. Ella reached across the table and placed her hand gently over mine, not squeezing, not urging, just being there. "It is not weakness," she said softly. "It is release." I nodded, even though I did not fully understand what was being released. Trauma? Guilt? The last remnants of denial? Maybe all of it. When she left later that morning to make some calls, the quiet returned. But now, instead of cutting through me like a knife, it pressed gently at my shoulders, urging me to move, to do something ordinary, something grounding. So I washed the dishes, I swept the kitchen floor, I folded the blanket draped over the couch. Simple tasks, small motions. They felt like reminding my body that life continued, that the world had not ended because I had finally chosen myself. But every so often, I found myself pausing, listening for footsteps that no longer existed, for the slam of the refrigerator door, for the irritated groan he made when he couldn't find something. My muscles tensed automatically, responding to old reflexes. It would take time before my body learned that danger was no longer a daily ritual. Around lunchtime, the phone rang. The sudden sound stabbed through the quiet, and my breath caught in my throat. For a brief, awful moment, I thought it might be Dominic somehow already calling from the station. But when I checked the caller ID, it was my cousin Martha, full of oblivious cheer, asking about a pie recipe. I answered politely, my voice steady enough to fool her. I had kept up this performance for so many years that slipping into it was like putting on an old coat. When we hung up, I stared at the phone for a long time, the memory of Dominic's controlling voice still lodged somewhere in my ear. And then, as if summoned by the very thought, the phone rang again. This time, it was his number. My pulse quickened. My hands went cold. I stood rooted to the floor, watching the phone vibrate on the counter. I could have ignored it. I should have ignored it. But a part of me, an old, wounded part, still needed to hear what he would say when stripped of the power he once held over me. I answered. There was a beat of silence on the line, then a low, tense voice. "Ma?" He said it like an accusation. "Yes," I replied, my voice as even as I could manage. "You really did it," he said. "You actually filed a report." "Yes," I said again. He let out a bitter, incredulous laugh. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me? I could lose my job over this." The irony hit me hard enough to nearly make me laugh. Where was this concern for consequences last night when his hand met my face? "Did you think about what you were doing to me when you hit me?" I asked. "When you shoved me?" "That was nothing," he snapped. "I told them I do not remember what happened. I was drunk." "That does not excuse it," I said quietly. "It was just one night," he insisted. "You're blowing everything out of proportion like always." Always. The way he used that word felt like a blade, attempting to rewrite the past to fit the narrative that made him comfortable. But something inside me, that new emerging strength, refused to absorb the blow. "I am not blowing anything out of proportion," I said. "I am finally seeing things clearly." He scoffed loudly. "Come on, Ma. You know me. I get angry. People get angry. You are overreacting." I felt my breath settle into something calm, almost detached. "This was not anger," I said. "It was violence." Silence. He did not know how to argue with that word. Violence. It cut through excuses and left no room for interpretation. Then his tone shifted, turning sharp and poisonous. "You had me dragged out of the house like some criminal, your own son, Do you know what people are going to say? There it was again, his greatest fear, stronger than remorse or reflection. What people will say, an obsession with how he appeared to the world, even while destroying the world inside his own home. I am not responsible for what people say, I answered. I am responsible for protecting myself. You're unbelievable, he hissed. You're pathetic. You're choosing strangers over your own family. I am choosing myself, I said. He went silent again, but this silence was different from the earlier ones. This was the silence of a man realizing that the tools he once used to control someone were no longer working. Then he tried a new angle. You're 70 years old, he said coldly. Who do you think you have besides me? His words stung, but instead of curling inward, I straightened, because the truth was simple. I have me, I said, for the first time in a long while. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. He was losing grip on the script, on the certainty that I would break if he pushed hard enough. You will regret this, he said finally, voice low and shaking with rage. No, I said. I already regretted staying silent for so long. The line went dead. I let my arm fall to my side and placed the phone gently on the table. The kitchen seemed to hold its breath with me. That was the first conversation in years where I had not apologized. Not even once. The realization felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Later that afternoon, Ella returned. She carried with her a small stack of papers and an expression I recognized. Protective, but careful not to smother. How are you holding up? She asked. I am learning, I said. Learning how to exist without his voice in the house. She nodded with a quiet knowing. It takes time. She slipped a piece of paper toward me, a flyer, a simple white sheet with black lettering, a support group for individuals harmed by family members, not strangers, not partners, family. The very word made my stomach twist. I am not sure I belong somewhere like this, I said, staring at the page. Ella sat across from me, her expression steady. Your entire story belongs there, she said. Maybe for the first time in your life, you will be in a room full of people who understand without needing you to explain. I swallowed hard. What if they judge me for waiting so long? They will not, she said, because every person in that room has waited, some for months, some for decades. What if I cannot talk? I whispered. Then you will sit and listen, she replied. There is no rule that says healing must be loud. I turned the flyer over in my hands. I felt its weight, not the paper, but the meaning behind it. A beginning, a possibility, something I had not felt in years. You do not have to decide today, she said. Just think about it. I nodded, though deep inside, a seed had already taken root. That night, the house was quiet again, but now the quiet felt like a space where something new could grow. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to nothing. No footsteps, no slamming doors, no drunken groans. My body, still keyed to danger, waited for noises that never came. I slept lightly but uninterrupted, my dreams a jumble of images. My younger self holding Dominic as a baby, the look in his eyes when Officer Miller led him out the door, the bruise on my cheek turning from purple to gold. The next morning, sunlight streamed in through the window, warm and soft. I rose, washed my face, and examined the bruise. It looked worse, but felt better. I touched the tender skin and felt a strange surge of gratitude. This mark, painful as it was, represented a truth I could no longer hide from myself. After dressing, I went to the kitchen, poured myself tea, and looked again at the flyer Ella had left. The date and time were printed clearly. Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. I held the paper between my fingers and felt a quiet, steadying certainty bloom inside me. It was time to stop surviving in silence. It was time to reclaim not just my safety, but my life. In the days leading up to the next Tuesday, I noticed how quietly a life can rearrange itself once the source of chaos is removed. It reminded me of those time-lapse videos where flowers straighten after being battered by wind, slow, almost imperceptible, but undeniably moving towards something healthier. I had lived so long inside Dominic's storm that I had forgotten what it felt like to wake without listening for the mood of the house. The silence that had once unnerved me now felt like soft sand beneath my feet, shifting but gentle, letting me place my weight down without fear of cracking something. But healing, I discovered, did not move in one direction. For every moment of calm, there was a moment where the past rose up like a hand pulling at my shoulder. I would be making tea, and suddenly remember the sound of his footsteps on the stairs, heavy and unpredictable. Or I would pass the hallway mirror and reflexively tilt my head to avoid looking at my own face the way I used to when I didn't want to see the fear in my eyes. My cheek was healing, though the center of the bruise still held a deep purple that refused to fade entirely. I would touch it absent-mindedly, as if checking a weather pattern. The tenderness was less each day, but the mark remained a reminder of what had pushed me to change. Strangely, I did not resent the bruise anymore. It had become like a bruise on a fruit that proves where it fell, not a flaw, but an origin point. On Sunday morning, I woke early, long before the sun had fully risen. I made a habit of opening the curtains now, something I had not done in years when Dominic slept in the room down the hall, hungover and irritable. Light used to be his enemy. Darkness used to be my way of keeping him calm. But now sunlight spilled freely through the windows, casting warm lines across the wooden floor. I sat on the edge of my bed and let the morning air touch my skin. Cool, quiet, gentle. It reminded me that I was still here, still breathing, still capable of choosing something other than fear. Ella called me that afternoon. She had a way of sensing when I needed contact, as if she could read the quiet between my breaths over the phone. "How are you doing today?" she asked. There was genuine care in her tone, the kind that didn't demand a cheerful answer. "I am managing," I said. "Some moments are harder than others." "Of course they are," she replied. "That does not mean you are going backward. It means you are human." I hesitated before asking, "Have you heard anything about him?" She sighed softly. "Only that he was released with conditions, mandatory check-ins, no contact order pending your confirmation, required assessment, nothing surprising." Hearing those words should have soothed something in me, but instead it stirred a strange sadness. Not regret, not longing, just sadness for the shape of the truth, sadness that this was who he had become, or perhaps who he always was beneath his charm and potential. "I expected to feel safer knowing he cannot come here," I said. "And I do. But part of me also feels hollow." "That hollow space," Ella said gently, "is where your old excuses used to live. When you stop justifying someone's behavior, you make room for reality. And reality can be painful before it becomes freeing." "I suppose," I said. "Have you decided about Tuesday?" she asked. I did not answer right away. My eyes drifted to the flyer sitting on the coffee table, its edges softened from how many times I had picked it up. Tuesday at 6:30 p.m., just one line on a piece of paper, but it felt like a door I could choose to open or close. "I think I should go," I said finally. Ella exhaled, relieved. "Good. That is a step towards something bigger than this moment." After we hung up, I spent the rest of the day tidying small areas of the house, not because anything was messy, but because the act itself felt symbolic. I dusted shelves, wiped down the refrigerator, sorted the drawer with loose batteries and pens. Every little task was like brushing away a piece of the old life to make room for the new. On Monday night, I received a voicemail from an unknown number. When I played it, Dominic's voice filled the kitchen, low and strained. "Ma, it's me," he said. "I guess you blocked my main number, so I'm calling from a friend's phone. Look, There was a pause. A sharp inhale. "I just want to talk." "I think you're blowing things out of proportion. I think we should fix this before it becomes a bigger mess. Call me back." I listened to the message twice. The first time, my stomach twisted, a reflex older than the bruise on my face. The second time, I heard something I had never let myself hear before. Desperation not born from love, but from losing a grip on control. I set the phone down without responding. That night, I barely slept. Tuesday arrived with a mix of dread and determination. I found myself rehearsing sentences in the shower, imagining someone asking why I had stayed so long and struggling to form an answer that didn't make me sound foolish. But I reminded myself of one of the things Maria had said in the first session. We blame ourselves for surviving the only way we knew how. I had survived by navigating an emotional minefield. There was no shame in that. At 5:45 p.m., I dressed slowly. My hands moved carefully, smoothing my blouse, adjusting the collar. I chose dark trousers again, something simple and steady. I brushed my hair back and did not try to hide the bruise. It had become like a banner saying, "This is where my story begins, not where it ends." Ella arrived right on time. The moment I stepped into her car, I felt the nervous energy buzzing through my body. "You look strong," she said. "I do not feel strong," I replied. "You look like a woman who is ready to speak," she countered. That is its own kind of strength. The drive was quiet, except for the hum of the engine and the occasional turning signal. As we pulled up to the community center, my throat tightened. There were new cars in the parking lot tonight. More people. The sky had already turned dusky, painted in shades of lavender and soft gray. The kind of sky that made the world feel like it was holding its breath. "Do you want me to walk you inside?" Ella asked. "No," I said gently. "I think I should go in alone." She squeezed my hand once before I got out. "I will be here when you're done." Walking into the community center felt different this time. The fluorescent lights still buzzed faintly. The linoleum floor still bore the faint scuff of shoes. But my steps had a steadier rhythm. Not confident, exactly, but purposeful. I followed the hallway to conference room B. The door was open again, and I saw more chairs this time. Maybe 10 or 11 women, some familiar, some new. The room smelled faintly of coffee and the lavender plug-in someone must have placed near the window. Maria greeted me with a warm smile. "Simone, I'm glad to see you back." Her welcome loosened something inside me. I took my seat, not in the same place as last week, but a little closer to the center of the circle. I wasn't sure if that meant anything, but it felt right. This session began differently. Maria asked each of us to share one thing we had done since the last meeting that felt like an act of self-preservation or self-respect. Small things counted, she said. The point was not grandeur, but recognition. One woman said she had told her son she would not be paying his overdue bills this month. Another said she had slept without her phone in the room, so she would not check for messages from the relative who hurt her. A third said she had made a doctor's appointment she had been putting off because her husband always dismissed her symptoms as dramatic. When it was my turn, my voice caught for a moment. "I went through an entire day without preparing myself for his mood," I said. It felt strange, quiet, like walking through my house without avoiding things. A few women nodded. One murmured, "That's huge." Maria asked if I wanted to talk about anything specific from the past week. I hesitated, then nodded. "He left me a voicemail," I said softly. "A different number. He wants me to call him back." "What did you feel when you listened to it?" Maria asked. "A mixture," I said slowly. My first reaction was fear, then guilt, then something else, something I cannot quite name. "What did his message sound like?" someone asked. I closed my eyes, replaying it. He said I was blowing things out of proportion, that we needed to fix this before it became a bigger mess. He did not apologize. He did not ask if I was safe. He only asked for control back. A few women exchanged knowing looks. "That's not a message of remorse," Joan said softly. "That's a message of fear." "Yes," I said. "Fear of consequences, not fear of losing me." "Do you want to call him back?" Maria asked. My entire body answered before my voice did. "No," I said. "I want to choose peace over chaos, even if that peace feels strange." Maria gave a thoughtful nod. "Then not calling him back is a boundary, a strong one." The woman with the scar near her eyebrow added, "Sometimes the first boundary is silence." I breathed slowly, letting that sink in. The group moved on to other women's stories. There were tears, soft laughter, long pauses. Listening to them was like listening to different versions of my own past, wearing different faces, different names. Pain echoed in different shapes, but the core was the same. Love distorted by someone else's brokenness. As the meeting neared its end, Maria offered a closing reflection. "Healing is not forgetting," she said. "Healing is remembering with less fear." The words wrapped around me like a blanket. Maybe I would always carry Dominic's shadow. Maybe the bruise would fade, and later another memory would rise in its place. But the fear, maybe that part could slowly lose its grip. When the session ended, I walked out into the evening air feeling not lighter, exactly, but more anchored. Like each meeting tied a new thread inside me, stitching together parts of a self I had not realized were torn. Ella saw me emerge and gave me a searching look as I opened the car door. "Well?" she asked. I settled into the seat and exhaled. "I think," I said slowly, "that tonight I learned something important." "What is that?" "That I am not just recovering from something," I said. "I am becoming someone." Ella smiled, a small, proud smile that reached her eyes. Yes, she said, you are. As we drove home, the streetlights flickered on one by one, lining the road like faint stars guiding us forward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was traveling towards something instead of running from it. The following morning, I woke before the alarm I had set, my eyes snapping open to a room washed in pale gray light. For a moment, I did not remember where I was in my own life. There is always that strange second upon waking when the mind feels blank, unburdened, like a clean page. Then memory trickles back in, coloring everything. My son hit me. I filed a report. I went to a support group. The facts landed one by one like stones on my chest, but they did not crush me the way they once might have. Instead, I lay there, listening to the quiet of the house, feeling the rhythm of my own breathing. I kept expecting to hear Dominic's footsteps in the hall, the heavy, uneven tread that had trained my nerves to stay alert at all hours. But the house remained still. I realized with a strange start that the silence no longer felt empty. It felt available, like unused space where something new might yet exist. I sat up slowly, bones protesting a bit the way they do at my age. At 68, mornings often came with stiffness in my joints, but I had always pushed through it because there was someone else I needed to accommodate. Someone else's breakfast, someone else's schedule, someone else's temper. Now, as my feet found the floor, I realized that for the first time in decades, my first thoughts could be about what I needed, not what I had to prevent. I did something small that morning that felt strangely radical. I made breakfast just for myself. Nothing elaborate, just scrambled eggs, a slice of toast, and some jam. But the act of cracking eggs into the pan and knowing no one would stumble in demanding more, complaining, or creating some crisis, it felt like reclaiming a tiny, sacred ritual. I plated the food, sat at the table, and did not rush. I did not jump up at every sound. I did not brace myself for insults about how I cooked. I ate slowly and tasted every bite. Later, I sat by the window with my tea and watched the neighborhood wake up. Cars pulled out of driveways. A woman walked a small dog in a pink harness. 2 teenagers shuffled by with headphones in, oblivious to the world. Life went on. That thought comforted me more than it discouraged me. The world had not ended because I had finally said no. If anything, it had started to look more real, less distorted by the funhouse mirror of Dominic's moods. Around 10 in the morning, the phone rang. My chest tightened for a split second. But when I checked the caller ID, it was from a number I recognized. Officer Miller. I picked up. Hello? Simone? He said, his voice steady but not impersonal. How are you today? How is anyone supposed to answer that question after the week I have had? I replied, a small, dry laugh slipping out before I could stop it. He chuckled softly. Fair enough. I wanted to update you. There will be a preliminary hearing scheduled for Dominic's case. You will receive formal notice, of course, but I wanted you to be prepared. The word hearing made my stomach flip. I had seen hearings on television, had listened to Ella talk about them for years, but now I would not be an observer. I would be evidence. What happens during that? I asked. It is mostly procedural, he explained. The judge reviews the charges, decides on continued conditions for Dominic, and hears basic information. You may be asked to speak, but your sister mentioned you would have her support. Of course she did. Will he be there? I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. Yes, he said simply, but there will be officers present, and if you prefer, we can arrange for you to wait in a separate room until it is your time to speak. You will not be alone at any point. I promise you that. The offer loosened a knot in my chest I had not realized was there. That had become my greatest fear in life, being alone in the face of his rage. Now, to hear someone as solid as Officer Miller say I would not be, felt like someone had moved a piece of furniture off my heart. Thank you, I said genuinely. Simone, he added after a pause. I also wanted to say, very carefully because it is not my place to give emotional advice, that what you did takes courage. A lot of people never report. A lot of parents never speak. You did. His words warmed me like a hand over a cold one. I'm just trying to stay alive, I said. That is what courage often looks like, he replied. I will be in touch with the official details. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a while, letting the reality sink in. There would be a legal process. There would be a judge, a room, possibly his eyes on me again. My heart stuttered at that thought, but beneath the fear, there was something calmer. This time, if he looked at me, he would not see the same woman. Later that day, I received a call from an unknown local number. The old dread flickered, but I answered. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Simone, hello," a warm voice replied. "This is Maria from the group." Something in me relaxed. "Oh, hello, Maria." "I hope it is all right that I called," she said. "I wanted to check in. I know sometimes after a powerful session, the next few days can feel raw." "That is one word for it," I said. "How have you been since we met?" she asked. I appreciated the way she asked, not pushing up, just opening a door and waiting to see if I would walk through. "I have been thinking a lot," I said slowly. "About what I said, about what everyone said. I did not realize how heavy my story was until I heard it out loud, sitting in that circle. It made things feel more real." "That can be both painful and liberating," she said gently. "Sometimes our own truth sounds harsh to our ears because we have been softening it for other people." We talked a bit about the next meeting, about practical steps they sometimes discussed, safety planning, emotional boundaries, even financial planning for women whose abusers controlled their money. I learned that some of the women had gone on to speak at local events, sharing their experiences in carefully moderated settings. "Do many women do that?" I asked, curiosity poking at me. "Not everyone," she said. "Some prefer to keep it within the group. Others, once they are ready, feel called to share on a broader scale. But it is always their choice. The important part is that they discover they have a choice." Her emphasis on that last word settled into me. Choice. After we hung up, I made myself some soup and sat at the table, stirring absent-mindedly. The idea of speaking beyond the group both terrified and intrigued me. There was a version of me, not too long ago, who would have recoiled at the thought of revealing family pain to anyone. Silence had been my armor, but silence had also been my prison. What would it mean to tell my story out loud? Not just to a circle of women in a community center, but to others, to anyone who might need to hear it. If you are relating to this story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. The line came back to me, almost like a ghost of something yet to fully exist. I had spoken it hypothetically before, imagining myself one day sharing my experience on some platform where women like me listened in the quiet of their kitchens, or in parked cars, or with headphones while folding laundry. The thought used to feel ridiculous. Why would anyone want to hear from a 70-year-old woman who had spent decades pretending everything was fine? But now, after sitting in that circle and feeling the energy shift when I described the breakfast table and the moment I said, I would like to file the report, I was not so sure it was ridiculous. Pain recognizes itself. Truth, when spoken plainly, tends to ring familiar in hearts that have been waiting for a similar note. The next time I went to the group, the chairs seemed to welcome me, as if I had left a piece of myself there the week before and it had held the spot. The women greeted me by name. Sylvia asked how my week had been. Joan squeezed my hand. The woman with the scar, her name was Lena, I learned, sat beside me this time, as if forming a quiet alliance. Maria opened the session with a simple question. "How has your view of yourself changed since you began to speak?" One by one, the women answered. Some said they felt less crazy. Others said they had started to see themselves as protectors of their own inner child, not just caretakers of everyone else. When it was my turn, I thought for a moment. I used to see myself only as a mother, I said. Everything I did, every decision I made, I filtered through that role. What is best for my son? How can I keep him from falling apart? How can I undo the damage his father's death did to him? I paused, remembering Dominic as a boy standing beside that sapling in the backyard. But lately, I continued, I have started to see myself as a person. It feels almost embarrassing to say that at my age, as if I should have known it earlier. But I did not. I thought my only job was to absorb whatever came my way and keep the family functioning. Now, I think maybe my life has meaning outside of how well I hold other people together. Maria nodded thoughtfully. That is not embarrassing, she said. That is awakening. Later in the session, she mentioned that the community center would be holding a small awareness event the following month focused on family violence across generations. There would be a panel with professionals, but they also wanted a survivor to share their story. "There is no pressure," she assured us. "We will not ask anyone who is not ready, but I wanted to put it out there." The room went quiet. I felt my heart start to beat harder, as if it had heard its name called. "Sharing publicly," Lena said softly, "was one of the scariest things I have ever done, but it also made me feel huge, like my pain finally had a purpose beyond just hurting me." "Did your family hear it?" I asked her. "Some did," she replied. "Some denied it, some accused me of exaggerating, but a few relatives reached out and said, I had no idea, and that alone made it worth it. Because sometimes you think no one notices, but really, they just do not know how to see." After the group, as everyone gathered their things, Maria approached me. "Simone, can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "If, and only if, you ever feel ready to share your story beyond this room, I think it could help a lot of people," she said. "You have a way of speaking that is clear but calm. You do not sensationalize, but you also do not downplay. That is rare." Her words unsettled me in a new way. Compliments always did. I had spent so much of my life being told I was too much or not enough that genuine recognition felt suspicious, like a trick. "I am not sure I am ready for that," I said honestly. "I did not say you were," she replied with a gentle smile. "I said if you ever are. I only want you to know the option exists." That night, after I returned home and the house settled into its quiet rhythm, I sat at the kitchen table with a blank notebook. The lamp cast a warm circle of light on the page. My pen hovered over the first line for a long time. Finally, I wrote the words. "My son laid a hand on me." The next morning, I served him breakfast in justice. Seeing the sentence in ink made my heart leap. It looked like a title to something bigger than myself. A chapter heading, a video title, a confession, a declaration, all of the above. I kept writing, slowly at first, short lines, fragments, then longer sentences, threading memories into a rough shape. The slap, the silence afterward, the call to Ella, the breakfast table aligned like a courtroom, his face when he saw Officer Miller. My voice saying, "I would like to file the report." I wrote until my hand ached and the letters grew shaky. I was not trying to be poetic. I was trying to be honest. By the time I set the pen down, several pages were filled. My story did not yet have a polished structure, but for the first time, it existed outside my own body. On paper, it could be seen, held, read. It could eventually be heard. As I closed the notebook, I realized that something fundamental had shifted in me. I was no longer only reacting to what had been done to me. I was beginning to act from who I was becoming. A survivor, a witness, a woman with a voice and a story. And deep down, beneath the ache and the lingering grief, a new thought took root. Maybe my suffering could become a lantern for women still walking in the dark I had finally stepped out of. I did not expect the hearing notice to arrive so quickly. When I opened the mailbox that Thursday morning and saw the official envelope with the county seal pressed into the corner, a cold tremor slid through my chest. I stood on the porch for a moment, holding the envelope between my fingers, feeling its weight. It was not heavy, not physically, but it seemed to tilt the world ever so slightly. A reminder that what had happened in my kitchen was no longer just a private tragedy. It was now an entry in the legal system, a mark on paper that could not be taken back or rewritten by excuses. I carried it inside and placed it on the dining table. I did not open it right away. Instead, I made myself breathe, slowly, evenly, like Maria had taught us at the group. I boiled water for tea, I added honey, I stirred. All the while, that envelope sat there like a quiet sentinel, waiting for me to gather the courage to face it. When I finally opened it, the text was direct and formal. The preliminary hearing would take place in 10 days. I was required to attend. Dominic would be present. There were instructions for victims' accommodations, including a private waiting room and a note about support services. My eyes lingered on the line that read, "The victim may make a statement if she chooses." If she chooses. That phrase pulsed in me like a heartbeat. I folded the letter carefully, tucked it back into the envelope, and set it aside. I did not know yet whether I would speak. The thought of facing Dominic in a courtroom, even with officers and a judge present, made my pulse stutter. But there was another part of me, quiet but insistent, that whispered I might be able to find my voice again, even there. I spent the rest of the morning cleaning things that did not need cleaning, wiping down the refrigerator shelves, reorganizing the spice cabinet, scrubbing a pot that was already clean. My hands moved automatically, but my mind kept drifting back to the hearing. It was during one of these mindless cleaning sessions that my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I found a woman standing there I had never seen before. She was in her mid-50s, maybe, with dark hair pulled into a neat bun and a folder tucked beneath her arm. Her clothes were simple but put together, the kind of outfit someone wears when they are used to visiting people during difficult times. "Simone Adams?" she asked. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "I'm Karen," she said. "I volunteer with a program that supports victims of family violence during court proceedings. Officer Miller gave me your name and mentioned you might appreciate some assistance." I stepped aside. "Please, come in." She entered with a respectful quietness, looking around the living room, not in judgment but in observation. "I won't take much of your time," she said gently. "I just wanted to explain how the day of the hearing will work, so you don't feel overwhelmed." I gestured toward the couch and sat opposite her. Karen explained everything clearly, calmly. The layout of the courthouse, the separate waiting room, the procedure for entering and leaving, how to avoid crossing paths with Dominic except in the courtroom. She spoke of safety protocols and victim rights, emphasizing that I did not owe anyone, including my own son, anything other than my truth. I found myself gripping the edge of the cushion. "What if he tries to speak to me?" I asked. "He won't get the chance," she said. "And if he tries, he will be stopped immediately." The confidence in her tone seeped into me like warm water. "Thank you," I said. "Would you like me to accompany you that day?" Karen asked. "I can be your designated support person in the room." I thought about it. Having someone at my side might steady me. But I also had Ella, and I knew she planned to come. "My sister will be with me," I said. "But I appreciate your offer." She nodded. "Then I'll meet you there and make sure you're comfortable before things begin." When she left, I watched her walk down the driveway and felt a surprising sense of gratitude. It amazed me how many strangers stepped forward when someone finally said I need help. For so long, I believed that asking for help meant weakness. Now I was learning that it invited strength from unexpected corners of the world. That afternoon, I called Ella to tell her about the notice and Karen's visit. She listened carefully, her breath steady over the line. "I'll be there with you for every second," she said. "You won't face him alone. Not ever again." "Thank you," I whispered. After we hung up, I felt drained, as if my emotional energy had been siphoned out through the phone. I made myself a small lunch and ate only half. My appetite had changed these last few weeks. Not lost, exactly, but uncertain, like my body was adjusting to a life without the constant vigilance that had lived in my home. It took time to learn how to be hungry for anything other than peace. The following days moved slowly, each one carrying a mixture of unease and growing clarity. I continued attending the group sessions. Hearing the other women speak felt like someone was finally placing words on the shelves of my mind where they belonged. One woman named Ruth talked about the first time she wore a red dress, after years of her husband calling her too old for bright colors. She said she felt like a child coloring outside the lines, terrified but alive. Another woman, Marisol, spoke about the first night she slept with her bedroom door unlocked after her son moved out. "It was like teaching my heart to breathe again," she said. Their stories brought me comfort. They also lit ideas inside me that surprised me. I had spent decades thinking of myself as insignificant, a supporting character in someone else's storm. Now I was beginning to see the outline of a different version of me. At the end of one session, as we gathered our things, Lena asked, "Simone, would you want to get coffee sometime? Just the two of us?" Her request caught me off guard. Friendship had not been part of my life for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to be invited into someone's world instead of pulled into someone's chaos. "I would like that," I said. We met 2 days later at a small cafe near the park. The place smelled of cinnamon and fresh pastries. Light filtered through the tall windows, casting warm patterns on the wooden tables. "I used to come here with my granddaughter," Lena said, stirring her tea. "Before everything happened with my nephew, I stopped coming because it reminded me of happier times, or maybe because I didn't feel worthy of them anymore." "I know what you mean," I said. There were so many things I stopped doing without noticing. She nodded quietly, then added, "Your story, it stayed with me. It reminded me of things I had buried." I did not know how to respond, so I simply listened. "You mentioned writing," she said. "Have you done more of it?" "A little," I admitted. "Mostly small pieces, memories, feelings. I am not sure what any of it will become." "You don't have to know yet," Lena said. "Sometimes the writing becomes its own answer." Her words stayed with me. Later that week, I found myself returning to the notebook at night, the same one where I had written the first line. My son laid a hand on me. The next morning, I served him breakfast and justice. I added new pages about moments I had forgotten, pieces of myself I had tucked away. The night Dominic broke the lamp and blamed me for making him angry. The time he yelled at me in the grocery store because I picked the wrong cereal. The weekends he slept until noon and then demanded I make him coffee as if I were a maid instead of a mother. Writing it all made my hand shake sometimes, but it also made something inside me settle, like dust finally deciding where it belongs. As the hearing approached, I noticed the anxiety blooming in subtle ways. I would brush my teeth and feel a sudden tightness in my chest. I would stand at the sink washing dishes and feel a tremor move through my fingers. Sometimes I would catch myself rehearsing imaginary conversations with Dominic, moments where he apologized or moments where he didn't, moments where I yelled or moments where I stayed quiet. But none of those imagined scenes felt accurate, because the truth was, I did not know who I would be in that courtroom. Not fully. I only knew she would be someone different than the woman he last saw sitting at the breakfast table. 2 days before the hearing, I received another voicemail. Same unfamiliar number, same voice. "Ma, I know you got the court notice. I swear this is getting blown out of proportion. They're making me sound like some monster." He paused. "You know I didn't mean it. You know how I get when I'm drinking. We can fix this. Just take it back, okay? Just tell them you exaggerated. I'll get help or something if that's what you want. But don't ruin my life." I sat at the kitchen table after listening to the message, a heaviness settling in my bones. His voice sounded strained, but still missing the one thing I needed to hear. He never once said, "I'm sorry I hurt you." Not once. I deleted the message. The night before the hearing, Ella stayed with me. We cooked a simple dinner: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, sautéed with garlic. Something comforting, something familiar. We talked about anything except the hearing for most of the night. A new cafe she had tried, a book her neighbor recommended, an old case she remembered from her bench days. But when we finished washing the dishes, the subject found us. "Are you ready?" she asked gently. "No," I said, "but I think I am prepared." "That is enough." I nodded, then asked the question that had been gnawing at me. "Do you think I should speak? At the hearing?" Ella set down the towel she'd been holding. "I think you should do whatever makes you feel safest and most true. If speaking gives you strength, speak. If silence protects you, stay silent. You are not proving anything to anyone. You are protecting your future." "I want to be strong," I said. "You already are." Later, as I lay in bed, the house dark and still, my mind refused to quiet. I thought of Dominic as a baby, the way he used to wrap his tiny fingers around mine. I thought of him as a teenager, so angry at the world, lost in ways I could never understand. I thought of the man he had become, hardened, entitled, emotionally reckless. And I thought of the woman I had become, bent but not broken, quieter but deeper, soft but not weak. When morning light finally came, I rose with a kind of steady determination I had never felt before. I put on a simple, elegant outfit: black slacks, a soft cream blouse, my mother's old earrings. I brushed my hair back and looked at my reflection. The bruise had faded to a muted yellow, barely visible now, but I still saw it, and I would carry its memory with me into the courtroom, not as a mark of shame, but as a reminder of the line I had crossed to save myself. As Ella and I walked out the door, she asked quietly, "How do you feel?" "Like I am finally walking into the truth," I said, and for the first time in years, I felt ready for whatever came next. The morning of the hearing had a strange stillness to it, as if the world had slowed down just enough for me to feel every heartbeat, every breath, every tiny tremor running through my hands. I woke long before the alarm, my eyes snapping open to a dim blue room. For a moment, I lay there listening to the faint hum of the heater, noticing how quiet the house was compared to the mornings when Dominic lived here. Back then, even silence felt tense, like a warning. Now the silence felt like a long-held breath waiting to be released. I rose slowly, keeping my movements deliberate. I chose an outfit I had laid out the night before. Dark slacks, a soft navy blouse, comfortable shoes. Nothing flashy, nothing meant to draw attention, just something that made me feel grounded. At my age, I did not bother trying to disguise the lines on my face or the faint tiredness around my eyes. But I did brush my hair back neatly and clasp the simple silver necklace my late husband had given me on our 25th anniversary. It was not armor, but it was something of myself I wanted close. Ella brewed coffee in the kitchen while I dressed. Her presence was like a steady flame in a dark room, quiet, warm, unwavering. When I came downstairs, she looked at me the way she once looked at witnesses she respected, with calm confidence and a hint of pride. "You look strong," she said simply. "I feel awake," I replied. She nodded. "That is enough for today." We left the house together, locking the door behind us. As I stepped onto the front porch, I felt a strange mix of dread and clarity, a sensation like stepping into cold water. The day was bright but crisp, the kind of morning where the air seems sharper than usual, cutting across your skin in a way that makes you feel distinctly alive. I inhaled deeply and let the coolness settle my nerves. When we reached the courthouse, my legs felt unusually light, as if my body didn't quite know how to carry this new version of me. The building itself loomed tall and impersonal, columns of stone, wide steps, glass doors reflecting the sky. I had been here before, years ago, to drop off Ella for work or to attend ceremonies when she received awards. But standing there now, knowing I was walking into a room where my son would be present and accountable, felt surreal, like stepping into a dream where every detail was too sharp, too vivid. Karen, the victim support volunteer, waited near the entrance just as she promised. She approached me with a gentle smile, her eyes warm but professional. "Good morning, Simone," she said softly. "I'm glad you're here." I nodded. Words felt fragile in my mouth. She led us through the security checkpoint and down a long hallway where the sounds of heels and murmured voices echoed off the tile floors. My heart pounded steadily, each beat a quiet reminder. You are here. You survived. You chose this. We reached a door labeled Victim Support Room. Karen guided me inside. The room was small but comfortable, with cushioned chairs, a pitcher of water, and a table stacked with tissues. I immediately noticed something reassuring. No windows facing the hallway. No accidental encounters. "You'll wait here until we come to get you," Karen said. "Ella can stay with you the whole time." Ella placed a hand on my shoulder. "I am not going anywhere." I sat down and clasped my hands together to keep them from trembling. Karen stepped out briefly, returning a few minutes later with an officer I didn't recognize, a woman with a calm, sturdy presence. "This is Officer Caldwell," Karen said. "She'll escort you to and from the courtroom and remain near you at all times." Officer Caldwell nodded respectfully. "You are safe. Whatever you need, just let me know." I whispered, "Thank you," realizing how much I meant it. The minutes stretched into a quiet, weighty stillness. Ella kept me talking, small things at first, like a neighbor's new dog and the unusually cold weather. Her voice steadied me, reminding me that I was not the woman who had once stayed silent while bruises bloomed under her skin. When Karen finally returned and said, "It's time," my stomach lurched. But I stood anyway, legs steady beneath me. As we stepped into the hallway, I felt the air cool against my skin, each step echoing lightly. Officer Caldwell stayed at my side, her expression unreadable but firm. The courtroom doors loomed ahead, tall, wooden, heavy. I could hear faint murmurs from inside, shuffling papers, the low timbre of someone's voice. And then Ella's hand touched my elbow gently, grounding me. "Are you ready?" she whispered. "No," I said honestly, "but I am willing." She nodded. "That is more than enough." When the doors opened, the first thing I saw was the judge, a woman in her 60s with gray streaks in her hair and a sharp, attentive gaze. I saw the lawyers next, the clerks, the empty witness stand, and then finally him, Dominic. He sat at the defendant's table wearing a rumpled shirt and a suit jacket that didn't fit him properly. His hair was unkempt, his jaw tight, but it was his eyes that struck me most, dark, restless, scanning the room like a trapped animal. He expected to see me walk through the doors as the mother he once knew, timid, apologetic, small. But when our eyes finally met, something in his expression flickered. Surprise? Confusion? Anger? Maybe all three. I kept walking, refusing to lower my gaze. I sat where Karen guided me, beside Ella and Officer Caldwell. Dominic's eyes darted back to the table as if the very sight of me unsettled the balance he had relied on for years. The judge called the hearing to order. Her voice carried a measured authority that reminded me of Ella in her prime, calm but unyielding. The prosecutor presented the facts, the police report, the bruising, the statements, the history of escalations. I listened with a strange sense of detachment, as if hearing the story of another woman. Yet each detail struck a chord deep inside me, vibrating with memories I wished I could erase. When the judge asked whether the victim wished to make a statement, my breath caught in my throat. I felt Ella's hand squeeze mine. "You do not have to," she whispered. But in that moment, a clarity washed over me, soft but undeniable. "I would like to," I said. The room hushed. I stood on trembling legs, but by the time I reached the podium, something steadied me. Maybe it was the presence of the women in my support group echoing in my mind. Maybe the knowledge that Officer Caldwell was right behind me. Maybe the shock on Dominic's face as he realized I was not retreating. I met the judge's eyes and began to speak. "I am not here today because I want to harm my son," I said, my voice soft but carrying through the room. "I am here because I want to survive him." A murmur rippled through the room. "For years," I continued, "I convinced myself that his anger was a phase, that if I loved him enough, he would change. I excused the broken items, the harsh words, the nights I lay awake listening for signs of another outburst. I told myself I was helping him, but I was only teaching him that my boundaries did not matter." Dominic shifted in his seat, jaw tight. "I am 68 years old," I said, and it took a slap in my own kitchen to finally understand that love is not meant to be survived. It is meant to be shared. Respectfully, safely. My son forgot that, and I forgot myself trying to remind him. The judge's gaze softened, but she did not interrupt. "I do not speak out of revenge," I said. "I speak because I need the truth to live somewhere other than inside my bruised skin. I speak so I do not go back into silence where fear grows in the dark." My breath trembled, but my voice did not break. "I hope my son finds healing. I hope he finds help, but I cannot be the cost of that help anymore." When I finished, the room was utterly still. Even the air felt suspended. I stepped back, heart pounding. I felt taller and smaller all at once. Dominic stared at me with something like shock. But beneath it, I saw something I had never seen in his eyes before. Not remorse, but the first fragile crack in his narrative. The beginning of recognizing the truth he had pushed away for so long. The judge thanked me and turned her attention to the proceedings. There was discussion of conditions, of mandatory counseling, of a restraining order. Legal words filled the air, words that sounded heavy but necessary. Eventually, the judge gave her ruling. Dominic would be placed under probationary supervision, required to attend anger management and substance counseling, and prohibited from contacting me until further review. The gavel struck, a sound that echoed through my entire body. It was done. As the courtroom emptied, I did not look at Dominic again. I had already said everything I needed to say. He would face his path now, and I would walk mine. Back in the support room, I finally exhaled, my body trembling with a mixture of adrenaline and release. Ella wrapped an arm around me, not tightly, but with the gentle assurance of someone who had carried hope for me long before I knew I needed it. "You did beautifully," she said. "I did what I needed," I replied softly. Karen re-entered, her expression warm. "Simone, your statement was one of the strongest I've heard in a long time." I bowed my head slightly, letting the words settle. As we left the courthouse, sunlight spilled across the steps, bright and almost blinding. People moved around us, unaware of the storm that had just passed inside those walls. But I felt lighter, not because the battle was over, but because I had finally stepped out of hiding. That afternoon, I returned home and stood in my kitchen, holding the edge of the counter, letting the quiet embrace me. I touched my cheek, where the bruise had once bloomed, and felt only the faintest tenderness. A symbol fading, but not forgotten. I made myself tea. I sat at the table. And for the first time since everything began, I felt something unfamiliar spreading through me, slowly, gently, like dawn breaking. A sense of possibility. That evening, I opened my notebook again. The words flowed easier than before, not forced, not fragmented. I wrote about the courtroom. I wrote about the moment I stood and spoke. I wrote about the way my voice had sounded, like mine, but fuller, stronger. As the pages filled, I realized I was no longer just documenting pain. I was shaping the beginning of something new, something meant to be shared. And deep inside, quietly but unmistakably, a thought came to me. My story was no longer a secret. It was becoming a tool, a key, a light, one that might help someone else find the courage to leave their own dark room behind. In the weeks following the hearing, I noticed something strange happening inside me. Something quiet, steady, almost imperceptible at first. It was as though every day that passed carved out a small piece of space inside my chest. Space that had once been crowded with fear, excuses, and the endless work of managing someone else's chaos. And in that new space grew something I had not known in a long, long time. Hope. Not the dreamy, naive hope that things would magically fix themselves. Not the kind of hope that depends on someone else changing. This was a different kind of hope, sturdier and more rooted. The kind that blossoms from within, fed by one's own choices. The kind that takes hold when a woman finally says, "This is my life, and I will no longer apologize for taking it back." For years, my life had felt like a dim room where the curtains were always half closed. Now the light poured in from every corner, and each day revealed something new about myself. Some small ability I had forgotten, some strength I hadn't known I possessed. I began waking up without dread. I started cooking meals that I actually wanted, not meals dictated by someone else's moods. I walked around my neighborhood in the early evenings, reveling in the simple pleasure of fresh air touching my skin. These were small freedoms, yes, but to a woman who had lived under someone else's shadow for decades, they felt profound. The support group became a kind of anchor for me. Each week, I listened to the women share their stories, their struggles, their breakthroughs. And each week, I shared a little more of myself, pieces that had once been locked away. The group gave me a language for things I had never known how to name. Emotional abuse, coercion, cycles of violence, trauma responses, survival modes. Words that felt strange on my tongue but fit my story with uncanny accuracy. One evening after a session, Maria approached me with a calm expression and said, "Simone, I think you're beginning to find your voice." I told her I wasn't so sure about that. Speaking in that small circle was one thing. Speaking beyond it was another. But she smiled knowingly. Voices like yours don't disappear once they begin. They grow. Her confidence in me felt almost foreign, but comforting. Around that time, I received a letter from the court confirming the restraining order. Dominic was prohibited from contacting me in any way for the next 12 months, with possibility for renewal. When I read the document, I felt my throat tighten, not from grief, but from the strange, liberating certainty that for the first time in years, my home was truly mine. Of course, not everything healed at once. Trauma does not vanish simply because the threat is removed. Some nights, I still woke up startled by phantom sounds that reminded me of Dominic slamming cabinets or stumbling through the house in a drunken rage. Some days I caught myself glancing at the hallway mirror to check if I was presentable enough not to irritate him, even though he was nowhere near me. Healing, I learned, is not a straight line. It is a spiral. You revisit old wounds, but you revisit them from a place further along the path each time. One afternoon, about 2 months after the hearing, I received a message from Lena. "There's a community event next Saturday about family violence. Would you like to go with me?" I hesitated. Being in a larger group of people, listening to speakers on a subject so close to my heart, felt daunting. But there was something in her invitation that touched me. A reaching out. A reminder that connection was something I was allowed to have. So I said yes. The community center was bustling with people the day of the event. Women of all ages, a few men, advocates, counselors, volunteers, and survivors. There were informational booths, resource tables, pamphlets, and posters with messages about awareness, healing, justice. Lena and I walked through the room slowly, stopping to read stories displayed on large boards. Some of those stories mirrored mine so closely that they made me pause. stories of mothers hurt by their sons, of older women dismissed by doctors or relatives because boys will be boys, of women who had endured decades of suppression before finally breaking the silence. At one point, I turned to Lena and said quietly, "I thought I was one of the only ones." She shook her head. "There are so many of us. We just learned to hide well." Then, a few minutes later, Maria appeared. She greeted us warmly, then pulled me aside gently. "I'm glad you came," she said. "I wanted to ask you something." I raised an eyebrow. The organizers asked if we could find a survivor who'd be willing to share her story near the end of the event. Someone who can speak calmly and with clarity. Someone mature, thoughtful, relatable. She looked directly into my eyes. "I think that someone is you." My heart thudded painfully in my chest. "Maria, I don't know how to speak in front of a crowd." "You spoke in that courtroom," she reminded me. "And you spoke beautifully." "That was different," I argued. "That was necessity." "This is too," she said, "but it's also opportunity. Not for them, for you." I looked at the floor, overwhelmed by a swirl of fear and a strange sense of calling. "What if my story doesn't matter?" I whispered. Maria placed her hand gently over mine. "Simone, do you know how many women are sitting in rooms right now believing they deserve the harm they endure? Do you know how many older women think they have aged out of the right to safety and respect? Your story matters because you are them. You are every woman who stayed quiet for too long." Her words settled into me like seeds ready to sprout. I knew she was right. I had learned enough in the group to understand that shame thrives in silence. And I had lived enough life to know that women my age are often forgotten in conversations about abuse, as if the only victims worth saving are young, beautiful, or able to run. So I took a breath, steadying myself. "Okay," I said, "I'll do it." Maria squeezed my hand. "I knew you would." Half an hour later, I stood near the small podium set up at the front of the room, waiting for my turn. My hands were shaking, and I clasped them together to hide it. Lena stood nearby, giving me a reassuring nod. The room buzzed softly with conversations. People shifted in their seats. Volunteers arranged chairs. The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence between words. When the organizer called my name and said, "Please welcome a survivor who has graciously offered to share her experience," my knees wobbled slightly. But my feet moved forward, one step, then another, like they had learned to carry me without waiting for fear to give permission. I stepped up to the podium and looked out at the sea of faces. Some young, some old, some fragile, some fierce. I saw curiosity, empathy, exhaustion, hope. And instead of shrinking, something inside me expanded. Because for the first time, I understood that my story did not belong to Dominic. It belonged to me. I took a deep breath. "My name is Simone Adams," I began, my voice steady despite the tremor in my heart. "I am 68 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that being a good mother meant enduring whatever pain my son caused, as long as I could convince myself he still had a good heart beneath it." I saw heads nodding. I saw tears forming. I continued. "I survived my son's temper, his drinking, his anger, his violence. I survived the excuses I made for him. I survived my own silence. But 3 months ago, I realized that surviving is not the same as living, and so I chose to protect myself." I spoke about the slap, the breakfast table, filing the report, the hearing, the support group. I spoke about fear and shame, and the moment I finally said enough. I spoke about the bruise on my cheek, the bruise on my heart, and how both had finally faded into lessons rather than wounds. And then I said something that surprised even me. I used to think my story was something to hide. Now I believe it is something to give. When I finished, the room was silent for a breath, then applause filled the air. Not loud or showy, but warm, sustained, genuine. Lena hugged me. Maria wiped a tear from her cheek, and I felt something bloom inside me, something I had not felt in decades. Purpose. After the event, several women approached me. One said, "I've never heard someone my age talk about this. Thank you." Another whispered, "I didn't know mothers could be victims too." A younger woman said, "I want to send this story to my aunt. She needs to hear it." Their words stayed with me for days. A few nights later, I sat in my living room with my notebook open, the pages filled with pieces of my story. The lamp glowed softly. The house was quiet, safe, mine. I read through what I had written and realized something. My story wasn't just a confession anymore. It was a lifeline. I thought about the women who might never attend a support group, the ones who lived in towns without resources, the ones who listened to stories on their phones late at night while hiding bruises under their sleeves, the ones who needed to hear from someone older, someone who lived long enough to know that fear does not have to be the final chapter. And just like that, I knew what I needed to do. I needed to share my story on a larger scale, on a platform where women listened in secret, in silence, in desperation, a place where stories became a form of survival. So I reached out to a young woman from the community center who ran an awareness channel. She told dramatic, confessional stories from survivors who wanted their truth spoken aloud without showing their faces. She asked if I wanted to record my own voice. I told her no, because my voice had become something precious, something private. But I did want the story told. I wanted it spoken in words that carried the weight of my journey without putting my identity at risk. Days later, she called back. "Simone," she said, "if you're comfortable, I think this story belongs not just in our small circle. I think it belongs on YouTube. Women all over the world need to hear it." I felt no fear, only certainty. "Yes," I said, "let it be told." She asked me to give it a title. I said, "My son laid a hand on me." The next morning, I served him breakfast and justice. And that was how my voice, my formerly hidden, timid, trembling voice, became a beacon for others. From that moment on, everything changed. I attended support group meetings, not just as a participant, but as someone others came to for guidance. A woman named Teresa said she filed her own report because of me. Another, named Hannah, said she left her abusive brother's home after watching the video version of my story. A woman from Canada wrote to the group's email saying she had been silent for 20 years, but spoke up after hearing what I had done. I realized then something profound. My pain had become a bridge. My story had become a lantern. My voice had become a home for others seeking courage. And with each message, each conversation, each tearful thank you, I felt the bruises inside me fade a little more. Healing is not just recovering. Healing is transforming. Now, as I sit in my living room months later, notebook closed, tea steaming beside me, I think about the woman I used to be. The one who lived in fear, who whispered instead of spoke, who hid instead of stood up. I honor her, I forgive her, and I let her rest. Because she walked through fire so I could find my way to this place, this moment, this purpose, this peace. And if you're relating to my story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. What would you have done in my place? Tell me where you're listening from. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you feel moved to support voices like mine, you can also use Super Thanks to help us reach even more people who need these stories. With heartfelt greetings. Until next time.